All right, and we are live this time with a true OG, Andre Laurent. Thank you for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you on.
It's a pleasure to be here. We've known each other for a long time now.
Yeah. Dare I say how long? Has it been 10 years?
Yeah. We've been on some cool things together, and it's just fun to see how you're out there on LinkedIn. Fearing forward.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been terrifying this whole time. So thank you for your support and your love, and you've been a champion through and through for so many years. And like you said, we've done some really cool stuff together. And before we dig in, though, for those who don't know you, you are a triple CCIE. For those who happen to not know what that is, I equate that to a PhD in tech. CCID, I mean, you've run, massive teams. You've trained, I don't know how many of thousands of people now. You've run different groups, and you are known as one of our technical geniuses in our industry. So I guess before we kind of dive in, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sabrina. So I wouldn't go as far as to brag like that, but yeah, there are some really smart people out there, and I've constantly been learning and growing throughout my career. I don't really separate career and personal, but a lot of people know me. They know me for my work at Cisco. I was an engineer, became an architect, ran all of worldwide enterprise networking, sales engineering, created the role for the overall global specialist engineering sales leadership. Like, that role didn't exist. So I held that role. And now, for the people that follow me, I don't post a lot on work these days, but I run Cisco Validated, which is an honor. I mean, it's the most trusted brand that Cisco has. It's the longest standing brand Cisco has, and it's synonymous with, designing and deploying and operating and securing networks, to be able to drive impact. And so we're expanding that portfolio, which has been pretty exciting. So that's Workfront. That's who I am.
And you're being very humble. But yeah, Workfront, that's just a couple of the things that you've done. In fact, I was just looking at the Validate page and how much you've done there with you and your team. It's incredibly impressive. And I want to get into, how do you build a brand of trust like that? How do you get there? But I also want to touch on some of the personal stuff, because I think that ties in with, like you mentioned, you're not doing a lot of work posting lately. And, when our CMO came to me a couple of years ago and said, Sabrina, you're a female millennial executive in tech, you've got to get out there more. And I'm like, absolutely not. That sounds horrible. And then I decided, okay, fine, I'll do it, but I'm not going to do it promoting our own company. That just felt wrong for a lot of reasons, And I'm noticing that you're doing a lot of your own personal posts and being incredibly vulnerable and authentic. And that's something that I've always known about you. And I see it evolving and expanding across the years, which is so incredibly inspiring and needed. Dare I say, especially with men, I think it can be very intimidating and scary. And I think, I've talked about this before. I think sometimes men have like the option of like 4 emotions. And if you don't have one of those 4 emotions, you're out, or you're weird, or you're something, or you're outcasted somehow. Yeah. So I want to know a little bit more about Andre personally, because you are incredible. You're an incredible human. You have some really neat personal talents and hobbies. So maybe let's touch on that real quick. And then I do want to get into some of the work stuff.
Sounds good, Sabrina. Thanks for that and for the kind words. I was raised by old women. My father passed when I was 6, and I was raised in an Armenian household, but in America. And but the language we spoke in the house with my grandma was Armenian. And I was raised with, I guess, very, very much like you're talking about, like this idea. I had to develop an idea of what a man should be. And it came back to being tough and being cool and, all these kinds of things. And so it was difficult growing up. I had a lot of trouble, and I was a troublemaker, and I was a trouble kid. And spent a lot of time in and out of the system. And that shaped who I am today in a lot of ways. And so when I went to university, I wasn't into tech. I knew nothing about tech. I couldn't even type my own papers. I mean, I used to dictate to my mom and sister, and they typed my papers in college. Okay, or if I had a girlfriend, I'd beg them like, please help me, don't write this paper. And I was just a caveman. And but I've always liked to go after things that are very difficult. I was a language and literature major, Chinese language and lit, and I spent a lot of time in China, and so I speak fluent Chinese. And my dream was like always like martial arts. Like I didn't even want to go to university. So I thought if I major in Chinese language and lit, then I can live in China and I can train with a famous master in China one day. And that's what I did. And so a lot of my young adult life, after university and during university was spent traveling the world, experiencing different cultures. I wanted to learn as much as I could. It was very much focused on like a personal and spiritual growth more than any kind of professional growth. Didn't even know if I wanted to work in the professional world. But tech caught my eye because a lot of my friends were Asian and a lot of them studied tech. So they challenged me one day and said, I bet you probably couldn't learn this stuff. And I go, no, I can figure it out, man. Like, they're like, hey, but you can't even type, and you don't even know what email is. And at that time they had like Telnet and Gopher and all these kind of weird things. I didn't know what any of that stuff was, but I sought out to go after some of these certifications. And I really like this feeling of being able to achieve something and having something to prove that I achieved something. Because even in my martial arts, the system that I studied never had any belts. You're a master and you know where you're at in terms of your level of skill. And when things aren't right, and you got to be honest about it. And when they're doing well, yeah, I might not see it myself, but I can trust that my master will tell me and be honest with me if something's going well. So that was my journey into networking. That was how I got into it. And once I had I went back to school for it. And once I got my degree within computer networking, then I couldn't find a job. The bubble burst. So I was like, this is awesome. I'm just going to travel the world again, like Guatemala, Costa Rica, take the bag, DJ in the nightclubs, that kind of thing. And so I lived my life. And once I started working, I never stopped. And so for many years, a lot of the posts that I've put on LinkedIn and those platforms have always been work related, because my hobby and my passion and my love was networking. And my vehicle were the certifications, the CCIE and the CCD. These things were like a vehicle for me to be able to learn, share, grow, impact lives. And these days I'm coming back more to my roots, if you will, more of the artsy stuff and more of the spiritual development and personal development. And I'm less hands-on in the tech these days. So I'm looking for other ways that I can learn, share, grow. Yeah.
And I think there's an interest. Thank you for that. And thank you for being so honest about that. I mean, just right there, you covered things that I think some people would be terrified to admit, especially in front of such a large audience. I mean, now we get about, maybe 50, 60,000 in a month. And so for you to share those kinds of things means a lot. And, I get these letters and these emails, mostly in these DMs, about, hey, thank you for having so-and-so on and having them share this, because this was something that I've been scared to share, or this is something that I thought was a hurdle in my life. But you even sharing opens up more windows and doors and avenues than I think you even probably realize, so thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's my mantra. I mean, I'm motivated to learn, to grow, obviously. And I know that I grow most when I share, because I get different perspective and we get shared experiences and we can go deeper. So learn, share, grow is my mantra. It's always been. I've really started leaning into that a lot more over the years.
Yeah, I've noticed that. So let's talk there, and then we'll talk the work stuff in a minute. Yeah. Where did that come from? What does that mean? What kind of responses are you getting? What is learn, share, grow?
Learn, share, grow to me is, I don't have to be Simon or, Pink or any of these like well-known people to share the things that I'm learning to be able to potentially benefit someone. And so when I start seeing those things, I'm like, everyone has something to share of value, because we're going through different experiences. We have different insights. We're coming from different perspectives. We have our unconscious biases, And so my idea is that if we just share the things that we're learning and that are meaningful to us in some way, or even things that we're just reflecting on and trying to understand, that could help somebody else to reflect. And to me, it seems like these days, mindfulness is the big thing. like being more and more mindful and aware, and connecting with that center. I recognize like there's so many different parts of me now. I have a personal coach. We're going through like some of the different energy that I put out and some of the different parts of me. And I haven't thought like that for a long time. I always thought that this is who I am, but I'm finding that there are parts of me that I don't necessarily want to acknowledge. And there are parts of me that I tend to lean forward with because I feel like they're powerful and they're justified, and and I've been successful with them. But it's not always the right energy. It's not always the right positioning of that part. And I'm not so one-dimensional, right? And none of us are. And that's why I think Learn, Share, Grow is just an opportunity. Now, is it taken off in terms of a hashtag? No, not really. I don't think there's a lot of people following that hashtag, and I'm probably one of the only people that posts with it, or maybe one of the few. But I'm going to keep posting with it because it means something to me, and it's my way of making a commitment to myself that I'll keep on that journey.
Sometimes it just takes one person, and it's hard often, I would argue, to pinpoint one thing. Like, when did my fear forward start becoming a thing for me? What was that one thing that propelled me to say, I'm done being scared of things? And frankly, I'm so done being scared of things. I'm going to be scared in public because that's the most scary thing for me. So I think, yeah.
I was going to say, because we had this conversation, and I was, it was interesting to me because I was like, I have a lot of respect for you to be able to be so courageous to lean in when you have fear. And I was expressing to you, like, I'm hardly ever really fearful. Like, I don't have this fear. And maybe it's because I so resent fear and guilt and those things that I just really like, I will not accept it. And that's one of the parts of me that I have to embrace, right? It's like, there are parts of me that are fearful, but I just ignore them. I abandon them. I push them down, and I just go forward. So I don't really have as many opportunities to be courageous. And I'm almost envious that you're having these kinds of experiences where you have this fear and you have to be courageous and you have to struggle with it and then go forward. And I got a lot of respect. And so I'm trying to find out, like, what are those things that, am I not mindful enough? Am I not reflecting enough? Like, what are the things that I really am fearful with? And I think it's exploring those parts of me. Like I said, there are parts like I don't want to explore.
Yeah. And again, I don't think that this is a gender thing or an industry thing. But in my very limited one human in this world experience, I think a lot of us, especially at a certain level in our careers, we're expected to have all the answers fast. It's supposed to be right all the time, or at least a very, large portion of it. And a lot of times people are coming to you for answers. Just today we worked with at least two that I can think of, Fortune 100s. One's a Fortune 10 on their AI strategy, which is going to make or break a big part of their business in the next, decade plus. That's a lot of pressure. And then you start going, okay, well, I'm supposed to have all these answers. I'm supposed to always be okay. And something I'm learning is that it's not just okay to not be okay. We've all heard that, we get that. But in a lot of times, that's when you grow the most.
Totally.
You go, how do I get there? How am I going to expand myself? To your point, what am I scared of? What are those parts that maybe I'm not willing to admit to other people, and therefore not necessarily even willing to admit to myself? So maybe you can walk us through it. I mean, maybe this is something you're working on in your coaching, but how are you getting there? How are you unveiling those pieces of yourself? And then what do you do about it? Because it's still scary or intimidating, or put whatever emotion on it that you want. It's part of the human condition. So I think it's something that we all relate to.
It's funny. I come back to my artsy roots. Like, I spend a lot of time writing. I used to be a rapper. So people go to my LinkedIn and they go on the first page and they look at some of like my top linked posts. It's like an open letter to my first mentor, if you will. He saved my life. I mean, without that guy, I would have been dead by now for sure. I would have died as a kid. He came in. It was like an angel came in my life. And I started with an open letter, and then I had put that rap. That rap's from my childhood. I haven't rapped in a long time, but then, so I'm thinking about like the parts of me, for example. I'm reflecting on the different energy, and like, is that the protector? Is it, is it the guardian? Is it the the punisher? Am I the equalizer? People would say a lot of times I'm an equalizer. Even in my profile in Cisco, we use a tool and it comes back and it says I'm a connector and equalizer. And I relate to that. I see myself as Denzel Washington coming in, saving the day, a lot of tolerance, But those aren't the only parts. I got this little boy inside of me who, someone just feels abandoned, and like I haven't necessarily taken care of that little boy. And that comes back to some of the dreams that I've had. When I was young, traveled to China, I was scared. I was 19 years old, never been out of the house, never done my own laundry. I had to wash clothes by hand. I'm going to another country. I don't speak the language well. I'm going to meet a new master. Can I find him? I went there without even knowing if I could find the guy. And I had a letter of recommendation. So like all these kinds of things, it's just a matter of being in touch with my emotions. And emotions are a difficult thing, I think, for most people, but especially someone like me who grew up without a father and felt like I had the example of a man was one thing that I saw in the movies, real tough. And it wasn't until I started to explore emotions as a younger man and come to terms with certain emotions. And I'm talking about like fear and guilt and sadness and hurt and, these kinds of emotions or even happiness, like started truly embracing them, understanding, learning how to express them. That's when I started growing the most. And so that's where I'm coming back to. I'm coming back to that. So I spend a lot of time reflecting. I spend time rapping sometimes now. Like I was rapping on this parts of me. I was like, how do I learn to just be when I'm struggling to see the different parts of me? Some parts are free. These parts you see, these parts agree, and they got the smarts to be. However, what about the other parts? The parts that don't have the strength of smarts, the parts lying naked and broken with crushed hearts, lacking any hope for new starts. Are you ready to acknowledge these parts? Lost starts, crushed hearts, lost souls, the castaway, the abandoned, left to die in the holes, the souls we're ignoring and we're protecting from paying life's tolls. And so, just rapping sometimes and writing and thinking and then talking to people that I trust and that it can get down to a different level of like conversation and reflection. That's how I go. And that's where I find my strength. So it's stuff like that.
And you hit on, we're going to put the lyrics in the comments below or in the description because I want you to reread them. You hit on a couple things, maybe some of the failures, right? Things, those starts that maybe didn't get the finish that you were hoping for, or maybe, those failures, those broken parts. And I think so many of us, and if I could dare, I would say the majority of us, at least in our industry, I won't speak for the whole world, but we are so maybe obsessed with looking like we're okay.
Yeah.
And looking like we're more than okay. We've got our act together. We're having a perfect day every day, no matter what. And that's part of the reason, one of my fear forwards was dealing with that myself, was having this very specific image and brand. And so I posted a picture of myself crying.
Yeah. It's awesome. I love that.
Terrifying.
It's daring.
I haven't looked, but the last time I looked, there was about 150,000 people who had seen me cry.
Yeah.
And I think, and the outreach that I got after that was insane. And it all stemmed from a man that was on a call, a client of ours. And he said, you know what? I have had just probably the worst day of my life. My best friend's daughter just died and I'm broken. And I think people like you, people like him, who are willing to say, I've got all these really amazing parts. You truly are a mastermind in our industry. There's no doubt about it. And there are other pieces to you. And it's a very good thing. To your point, that's when you learn the most. That's when you grow the most, is when you embrace those parts and go, I'm not perfect. Turns out there's not one single individual on this entire planet who's perfect. Why are we pretending to be perfect? And I've noticed, even in my own relationship with you, how I've gravitated towards you more now, because I can see those sides of you, because I can relate to those sides of you, and because I learn from those sides, which also helped me in our tech side of the world. There's this other industry and side of our lives that we love. But I think you're finding a really beautiful way to merge the two, unlike really what I'm seeing other people in our industry do. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. we'll keep going. I mean, that's the Cisco Validated thing on the work front is really cool. Like I had dreams way back when, when Cisco Validated was synonymous with Cisco Validated Design. There was nothing more to the brand. Still, people today probably don't know there's more in the portfolio. Like we're expanding the portfolio because it's really about value and finding different ways to be able to bring value and create connections. Because that comes back to my connector side. So, in 2014, I remember talking to some distinguished engineers in the company. And I'm like, hey, we have these amazing Cisco Validated designs. They're the answer. They feel like they're the answer. And a lot of people will say, those are the answer. We need more of those. And I go, can't we build a community around it or something? Can't we find ways to connect with more people and engage and like understand and share more regularly our experiences? Because so many amazing things are happening, even in the tech world, in terms of how people go about design and deployment, but nobody's capturing, nobody's sharing, nobody has time to document it and package it for somebody else to learn from it, like a case study. Can't we do something more? And what if we created a platform to be able to do that? So this community idea was there for me, even back in 2014, when I was pitching to some of the executives in Cisco in the ELT, like under the CEO, under John. And, it kind of fell flat, but here we are. And, we've launched the communities now for a year, and they need to be nurtured and cared for. And we all play a role in that. And I encourage people to go there and do that. And it's a portfolio. And the funny thing is, today you go to Cisco.com and front and center on the middle of Cisco.com is Cisco Validated. Okay. I don't know how many times I failed in terms of trying to press this issue that the audience that does design, deployment, operations, and security, and that's in the trenches, they're the most critical customer that we have. And we got to care for them. We got to be guardians of the galaxy. I've led with a lot of the like equalizer, punisher style. And now I think I lead a little bit more with compassion. And I still have that other part, by the way. Don't get me wrong. That part comes out. But
I know. Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to a buddy today. He works for me. I care for my team care for them deeply, right? And I was talking to him. We're very transparent. We're very transparent with one another. And I said, I'm not the best at grace. Like, it's like, no, you're really, like you're a compassionate guy. And I go, no, I mean, like, I don't give people grace as like I want to. Like, it's something I need to sit down and reflect on. I need to define that word because it calms me. It's a really weird thing. It's like hey, if somebody said, Andre, could you just give me some grace here? Somebody recently said that to me. And I said, and it just completely calmed me. And I thought, that is an interesting thing that I got to reflect on. And that's how it happens for me these days. Something comes up, could be at work, in the playground of personal growth, which is work. Could be in the playground of personal growth, which is my home. It could be somewhere else, but they're all playgrounds for personal growth. And we're here to play, and we're here to learn, we're here to share, we're here to grow. And that's kind of it.
So how does that play in with, what you're doing around Cisco Validated? How does that play into building a community? Because I think there's a lot of overlaps that can possibly even be overlooked that we think, oh, this is just Sabrina and Andre being mushy or, talking about feelings again. But it translates in business. And frankly, once I've started this, our business doubled. And it is on its way of doubling again. There is a real genuine business value for what you're saying. Unpack that for me.
Yeah. If I don't lead, so everybody talks about having the customer at the center. And then the question becomes, well, who's the audience you're trying to target? What's the outcome you're trying to drive? And I want to do right by the customer. And my customer is the practitioner, what we call practitioner in the company. It doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but it's anybody responsible for designing, deploying, operating, securing, anybody in the trenches. You're a design engineer, deployment engineer, your operations engineer. It doesn't matter to me. Like, you are the one that needs to make it happen. And you don't have what you need. And I want to make sure you have what you need, but I can't be the only one to get it for you because I'm not the only one with the answers. So I got to create more ways than just Cisco Validated designs to get you what you need. Those are very valuable. We need to continue to put those out. But there are so many more things. Like, these engineers, they think about some of these old terms. I'm gonna date myself here, but PPDIOO, right? Like prepare, plan, implement. PPDIO, prepare, plan, design, implement. Hell, prepare, plan, deploy, implement, optimize. Operate, optimize. Anyhow, I think that's what it is. But essentially, it comes back to those things. It's like people want case studies on how you approach migration. They want to be able to figure out, how do I baseline and then measure the impact of something because I just made an investment decision. I positioned that we would be able to achieve X, based on some marketing language and some things that we talked about, but I never proved it out. And now I want to prove it so I can show my impact on the business. And then, I need to have a more strategic plan on how I'm going to approach this. There's no one place you're going to get all the information. So if we can find a way to link everybody together, again, it's about documenting these unshared experiences. Isn't that really what it is? Document unshared experiences, but give a context that somebody can share it within. And that's oftentimes missing, is we're sharing and it's noise because it doesn't fit into a context and an indexing. I'm simple. I think Legos. I didn't play with a lot of Legos as a kid, but I think in terms of Legos. It's a system. I have building blocks. They fit together. I have examples of how they can fit together. It's modular, but you can come and experiment and fit them together in other ways and build new things, and you look at something and you go, I want to build this on this. I'll pick a picture of what I want to build. Now I want to go build it, but I don't have the yellow Legos and the big red ones in those. So I think that way. My mind works that way. I'm constantly learning from everybody around me. And I want to create more opportunities for that. So I don't travel all around the world anymore all the time. I was doing that even, before working, as personal, like DJing the nightclubs again, doing that kind of stuff. And I did it during work, like 80% of the time on the road, all over the world, running, worldwide sales for networking and the whole business. And these days I travel from my computer. So how do I do that? I don't use most social media channels, right? Like platforms, but LinkedIn is one of those places. And then outside of that, I have my trusted circle, and I grow that circle over time. And these thoughts, these things I reflect on, they impact me personally. So of course they're going to impact the way that I approach my work, the way that I partner with my team, the way that I collaborate with others, the way I consider other people's needs, the way I try to deliver on those needs, and I try to be more mindful and listen. It's going to all have an impact. So when I say Cisco Validated today, I don't mean Cisco Validated Designs. I mean a portfolio of offerings. I mean how we execute the framework to do a better job at validating our solutions so it's more customer-centric in nature. It means how we make sure that we have the right profiles for different verticals, and we can make sure that we're doing all of the testing that's needed for each of our solutions, considering different types of use cases and different kinds of verticals. It means developing the guides. It means establishing the communities where I can share information just in time through discussion forums, through knowledge articles, through webinars, those kinds of things. And we'll continue to learn. And one day we might go to market with something that nobody's ever even thought of. And that's what I want.
And that's exactly it. It's a couple things. One, it's how you show up with intent. What's your intention? Same with Cisco Validated, right? Same with our own conversations, how you work with your team, how you work with your customers, your practitioners. It doesn't matter. What's your intention when you show up? To your earlier point, and I wish we had more time. I always say that on these lives, but one of these days we're gonna have like hour-long lives or something. But I want to dig more into energy too, because it's so incredibly powerful and something we overlook. But also not just that, but how you build. When you come with certain intentions, when you build community with the intent of furthering other people's success, that builds trust. Yeah. Cisco Validated equals trust to me. It means if you come here, you're going to get something that you can trust.
Yes.
That this is here to help you. And I think that's the tie. That's the connection. That's the value. And I think the more that we can dig into that and really for our own personal selves, for our organizations, and it's not just all of this fluffy feel good, but to your earlier point, you're constantly learning. The reason why you're being so successful with Cisco Validate is because it's constantly iterating. You're constantly making sure that what you're putting out there is the absolute best in the world because you're constantly learning. You're surrounding yourself with incredibly brilliant people. Like you said, distinguished engineers. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It means insanely smart people, just the smartest kinds of people. But anyway, Andre, we're already over, and I'm so sorry because I need 12 more hours with you. But I want to give some people ways to connect with you. I want them to dig into Learn, Share, Grow. I want them to dig into Cisco Validate. Where can they reach you? What kind of resources should they be looking at? If they're interested in learning more about their own energy, what can they do? What resources would you provide the audience?
Yeah, connect to me on LinkedIn. If you're trying to figure out where to go for Cisco Validated, I mean, now it's so easy. Just go to cisco.com homepage, right? And then right in the middle, Cisco Validated, click on that. It's going to have like a landing page with, the growing portfolio, if you will, and be active in the communities. I'm not the only person that you might want to communicate with, right? Like, And I'm very open to connecting with people. I typically avoid the spam messages that I get. I connect with pretty much everybody on LinkedIn, by the way. I'm not one of those people that I have to know you and I'll connect with you. And then a lot of times the first time a message comes out, it feels more like a spam message versus hey, I want to connect with you and I saw this, I saw that, this training that you did back like 10 years ago. We'll have a conversation, but other people, I'm very polite still. I'm just saying, hey, I'm not here. I'm here to celebrate people and learn from people and share things in posts and read things that people share versus to make like business connection. Like it's not a platform I use for business connections, but yeah, I'm on there. So let's connect and follow the hashtag Learn, Share, Grow, on LinkedIn, right? Use the hashtag Learn, Share, Grow. Don't follow it. It's not my hashtag, okay? If you believe in Learn, Share, Grow, use it, and then just let's connect.
Yeah. I love what you're doing. I so enjoy you as a human being. I love being able to follow your journey. And thank you for just being a champion of goodness. I mean, you really are a champion of so many incredible people and thoughts and teams. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'll leave with one last note, and it's just that the happy, fluffy stuff that came up a couple times, the mushy stuff, it came up on this call a couple times. And we spend so much time attracted to noise, things that instill fear, guilt, anger. That's the stuff we need to block out. Like the happy, fluffy, mushy stuff. Like if we're afraid to be able to embrace that and take time to like dive into that, then there's something to explore. I'm not going to tell you need to reflect, but I would tell myself that if I was hesitant to be able to embrace those things, that it's time for me to cancel some noise, sit with myself and explore why is it that happy, mushy, fluffy bothers me. So more to the happy, mushy, fluffy. And
I love it.
You. And I love working with you, and I appreciate everything you do. Let's keep doing it.
You got it. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Cheers.